What are you doing? This is completely unprofessional. You're destroying company property.
I never thought the man who would change everything would be the same person who once poured hot coffee on proposal documents and called the presenter utterly incompetent in front of the entire boardroom. But 3 years later, that same man put a ring on someone's finger, and the story of how they got there is one nobody saw coming. Before we continue, please hit that subscribe button. Trust me, this journey is one you won't want to miss. This is a story about Adanna Okafor and Chisom Okonkwo. Adanna worked at Okonkwo Global Enterprises, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in Lagos. She'd been there for 2 years, working her way up from a junior analyst to a project coordinator. The pay was good, the environment was professional, and her boss, Chief Emeka Okonkwo, was a fair and respected man who treated his employees with dignity. Life was comfortable, predictable even, until his son returned from London. Chisom Okonkwo. The mention of his name used to make people in the office tense up. He came back with an MBA from Oxford and an attitude that could freeze the Atlantic Ocean. The first time Adanna saw him was at the quarterly company meeting. He walked in late, interrupting Chief Okonkwo's speech, wearing a perfectly tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's yearly rent. He didn't apologize, didn't acknowledge anyone. He just took his seat at the front, crossed his legs, and stared at his phone like the rest of the room was invisible. Chief Okonkwo introduced him as the new director of operations. Adanna's stomach dropped. Operations was her department. This meant she'd be working directly under him. The first project meeting was a complete disaster. Adanna had spent 3 weeks preparing a proposal for streamlining the distribution network across the Southwest region. She had charts, data analysis, projected cost savings, everything. When her turn came to present, she stood up, confident, ready to impress the new director. She barely got through the first slide before he interrupted. "Stop!" His voice was cold, clinical. "This is amateurish. The data sources are outdated, the methodology is flawed, and the conclusions are based on assumptions that don't reflect current market realities." He stood up, walked to the front, and took the remote from her hand. "This is how you do a proper market analysis?" Adanna stood there, frozen, humiliated, as he proceeded to tear apart 3 weeks of her work in front of 12 colleagues. Her hands were shaking. When he finally finished his impromptu lecture, he handed her back the remote and said, "Redo this properly. I expect it on my desk by Friday." Then he walked out. That was a Tuesday. She had 3 days. Adanna didn't sleep that week. She verified every data point, updated every source, restructured her entire methodology. By Friday morning, she had a completely new proposal, twice as detailed as the original. She printed it, bound it, and walked into his office at exactly 9 a.m. He was on a call speaking rapid French to someone about market penetration in Francophone West Africa. He gestured for her to sit without looking at her. When he finished the call, he extended his hand. She gave him the proposal. He read in silence for what felt like an hour but was probably 15 minutes. His face gave away nothing. Finally, he looked up. "This is adequate." Adequate. That was it. 3 sleepless nights for adequate. But something strange happened over the next few weeks. He started assigning Adanna more complex projects. Market research for expansion into Ghana. Feasibility studies for a new manufacturing plant in Enugu. Supply chain optimization for the retail pharmacies. Each assignment was harder than the last, each deadline tighter. It seemed like he was trying to break her, to force her to quit. She refused to give him the satisfaction. What Adanna didn't know was that he was watching her differently, noticing things. The way she stayed late to double-check calculations. How she learned basic TWI to better understand their potential Ghanaian partners. The detailed risk assessments she included in every proposal. He never said anything, never praised her, but the assignments kept coming, and they kept getting more important, included in every proposal. He never said anything, never praised her, but the assignments kept coming, and they kept getting more important. Then came the incident that changed everything. The company was bidding on a massive government contract to supply anti-malarial drugs to primary healthcare centers across 5 states. It was worth nearly 800 million naira over 3 years. The entire company had been working toward this for months. The final presentation was scheduled for a Wednesday afternoon at the Ministry of Health in Abuja. Tuesday night, Chisom called Adanna into his office. It was past 8 p.m., and she was exhausted. "The presentation tomorrow," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "You're doing it." She laughed, actually laughed. "Sir, that's your presentation. You've been working on this for 6 months. I have a family emergency. I'm flying to London tonight. My mother's surgery was moved up." He finally looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something other than cold professionalism in his eyes. Worry, fear even. "My father trusts me with this contract, and I'm trusting you. Don't make me regret it." He sent her all his files, his notes, his strategy documents. Then he left. Just like that. Adanna spent the entire night memorizing every detail, anticipating every possible question, preparing backup plans for the backup plans. The presentation was in front of 8 government officials, including the Minister of Health himself. Adanna was terrified, but she didn't show it. She channeled every ounce of confidence she'd learned from watching Chisom in meetings, his unshakable certainty, his command of details. She presented the proposal, handled their aggressive questions, and even made them laugh twice with carefully placed humor about the inefficiencies in the current distribution system. They got the contract. When Chief Okonkwo heard the news, he called an emergency celebration at the office. There was small chops, champagne, music. Everyone was congratulating Adanna. Then her phone rang. It was Chisom, calling from London. "I heard the news," he said. His voice sounded different, softer. "Well done, Adanna." He'd never used her first name before. It was always Miss Okafor, or just you. "Thank you, sir. How is your mother?" "She's stable. Surgery went well. Listen, I want to—" He paused. Hospital sounds could be heard in the background. "When I get back, we need to talk about your career trajectory here. You've proven yourself capable of more than project coordination." He hung up before she could respond. He returned 2 weeks later, and things were different. Not obviously, not dramatically, but different. He still demanded excellence, still pushed Adanna harder than anyone else. But there were small moments. A brief "good work" after a successful client meeting. A slight nod of approval when she predicted a competitor's strategy before it was announced. Once he even smiled when she made a sarcastic comment about the IT department's response time. That smile did something unexpected. The Christmas party was when everything got complicated. Okonkwo Global always threw an elaborate end-of-year celebration at a luxury hotel in Victoria Island. It was formal, elegant, the kind of event where everyone wore their best outfits and pretended to enjoy networking. Adanna wore a deep green dress with gold accessories. Chisom arrived late, as usual. He was wearing all black, no tie, looking like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. Adanna was talking to colleagues from accounting when her friend Ngozi noticed something. "Girl, is it me, or is the director looking at you like you're on the menu?" Adanna nearly choked on her champagne. "You're imagining things. That man barely tolerates my existence." "Right. That's why he's been staring at you for the past 5 minutes and hasn't blinked once." Adanna didn't dare look again. Instead, she excused herself and went to the balcony for air. The Lagos night was humid, alive with the distant sounds of traffic and music. She leaned against the railing, trying to calm her racing thoughts. "Running away from the party already?" She jumped. Chisom had followed her outside. He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and understated. "Just needed some air," she said, keeping her eyes on the city lights. "You look beautiful tonight." The words hung in the air between them. She turned to face him, certain she'd misheard. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were intense, focused entirely on her. "Sir, Chisom. When we're not in the office, call me Chisom." "That wouldn't be appropriate." "Neither is this, probably." He moved closer. "I've been trying to maintain professionalism, trying to treat you like every other employee. But you're not like every other employee, Adanna. You're brilliant, you're dedicated, and you challenge me in ways no one else does." Her heart was pounding. "You have a funny way of showing appreciation. You've been nothing but difficult since you arrived." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she'd never seen from him before. "I was harder on you because I was trying to convince myself that what I felt wasn't real, that if I pushed you away professionally, these feelings would disappear. They didn't." What feelings? He looked at her like she was being deliberately obtuse. I'm attracted to you, Adanna. I think I have been since you refused to back down during that first presentation, even when I was being an insufferable ass. She should have stepped back, should have reminded him about workplace policies and professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself say, "You were an insufferable ass." He laughed, actually laughed, and the sound transformed his entire face. I am. But I'm asking if you'd give this insufferable ass a chance to take you to dinner. As Chisom, not as your director, just as a man who would really like to get to know the woman behind all those impeccable presentations. She knew this was complicated, knew it could end badly, knew that dating her boss's son was probably the worst professional decision she could make. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she'd never expected to find there. Vulnerability, hope, something real beneath all that arrogance and perfectionism. One dinner, she said, but if you critique my menu choices, I'm leaving. He smiled that smile again. Deal. That dinner turned into 2, then 5, then losing count. They were careful at first, keeping things private, meeting at restaurants far from Victoria Island where colleagues might see them. He was different outside the office, warmer, funnier than anyone imagined. He told her about the pressure of being Chief Okonkwo's only son, the expectations that had followed him since childhood, the fear that he'd never be good enough to fill his father's shoes. She told him about growing up in Enugu, about her mother who worked 3 jobs to send her to university, about her dreams of eventually running her own consulting firm. They argued about everything: politics, music, whether Jollof rice was better prepared the Nigerian or Ghanaian way. He thought she was too idealistic about corporate social responsibility. She thought he was too focused on profits over people. But those debates felt exciting, challenging, like they were sharpening each other's thinking rather than trying to win. 3 months in, Adanna thought she had it under control, thought she could manage this relationship alongside her career, keep them in separate boxes. Then Chief Okonkwo called her into his office. She thought she was getting a promotion. Instead, he asked her to sit down and looked at her with an expression that made her stomach drop. Adanna, you're one of our best employees. Your work on the government contract was exceptional, and I've been considering you for a senior management position. He paused. But I've heard rumors that concern me, about you and my son. Her mouth went dry. Sir, He held up a hand. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking you directly. Are you involved with Chisom? She could have lied, should have lied. But Chief Okonkwo had always been honest with her, and she owed him the same respect. Yes, sir. We've been seeing each other for 3 months. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. I appreciate your honesty. Here's my concern. Chisom is being groomed to take over this company eventually. You're a talented professional with a bright future. If this relationship ends badly, one of you will likely have to leave. I don't want to lose you, but I also can't have personal drama affecting my company's operations. I understand, sir. I'm not forbidding this. You're both adults. But I'm asking you to be smart about it. Keep it professional at work. Don't let personal feelings cloud business decisions. And if it doesn't work out, handle it maturely. He leaned forward. Can you do that? Yes, sir, we can. Adanna told Chisom about the conversation that night. They were at his apartment in Ikoyi, and he took the news better than expected. My father's right. We need to be more careful. No one at work can have any reason to question your professional credibility, but being careful became complicated when feelings got deeper. When like turned into something much stronger. When the realization came that this wasn't just attraction anymore, this was falling in love. The realization hit during a crisis. The company had just learned that their main manufacturing plant in Onitsha had been shut down by regulatory authorities over alleged quality control violations. It was a nightmare. The company was hemorrhaging money, their reputation was at stake, and the media was having a field day with accusations of substandard drugs. Chisom was a wreck. People had never seen him like that. Stressed, uncertain, almost panicking. They were in his office at midnight, surrounded by reports and legal documents, trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. He was angry, frustrated, blaming himself for not catching the issues earlier. It's not your fault, Adanna said for the 10th time. The plant manager falsified inspection reports. You couldn't have known. I should have known. He slammed his hand on the desk. This is exactly what my father was afraid of, that I'm not ready for this responsibility, that I'll destroy everything he built. She stood up, walked around the desk, and did something she'd never done at work. She put her hand on his shoulder. Listen to me. You are more than ready for this. You're brilliant and dedicated, and you care about this company more than anyone I know. We will fix this. Together. He looked up at her, and she saw fear and gratitude in his eyes. I don't know what I'd do without you. Good thing you won't have to find out. They worked through the night and the next 3 days. They hired independent auditors, launched an internal investigation, voluntarily recalled products, and held a press conference where Chisom took full accountability and outlined their action plan. It was brutal but honest. The company survived. Barely, but it survived. And somewhere in those exhausting, terrifying days, the realization came. This wasn't just attraction or professional respect. This was love. Real, deep, complicated love. 2 weeks after the crisis ended, Chisom took Adanna to a quiet restaurant in Lekki. They'd been talking about expanding into East Africa when he suddenly went quiet. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing's wrong. Everything's right, actually. For the first time in months, everything feels right. He reached across the table and took her hand. I love you, Adanna. I'm in love with you. I tried not to be. Tried to convince myself this was just physical attraction or professional respect or anything else that made sense. But it's not. It's love. Tears pricked her eyes. You choose now to finally say something romantic? When I'm eating pepper soup and probably have red oil on my face? He laughed. You're beautiful even with red oil on your face. Say something, please. Because I'm dying here. I love you too. I have for weeks, maybe months. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it did. And I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. He came around the table, pulled her up, and kissed her right there in the restaurant. People were staring, probably taking pictures on their phones. But neither of them cared. Let them stare. That was 18 months ago. The relationship wasn't always easy. There were challenges. Colleagues who thought she was dating him for career advancement. Moments when they had to be extra careful to separate personal from professional. Times when the pressure of maintaining both a relationship and working together felt overwhelming. But they made it work. They established clear boundaries at the office. They never let disagreements at work bleed into their personal time. They proved mostly to themselves that they could be partners in both business and life without compromising either. Last month, he took her to Obudu Mountain Resort. She thought it was just a vacation, a chance to disconnect from work stress. On their second night there, they went for a sunset walk along the cable car route. The view was breathtaking, mountains stretching endlessly, the sky painted in orange and purple. He stopped at a scenic overlook and turned to face her. Do you remember the first time I called you incompetent? How could I forget? You humiliated me in front of the entire project team. I was an idiot, a scared idiot who just realized he was attracted to his employee and didn't know how to handle it. He took both her hands. You could have quit, could have reported me to HR. Instead, you came back with work so excellent that I had no choice but to acknowledge your talent. That's when I knew you were special. Where are you going with this? He smiled and got down on one knee. Her heart stopped. Adanna Okafor, you've challenged me, matched me, and somehow managed to love me despite all my flaws. You've made me a better leader, a better man, a better human being. I can't imagine building this life, this company, this future without you beside me. Will you marry me? The ring was perfect, elegant and simple. She was crying, laughing, barely able to speak. Yes, obviously yes. He stood up and kissed her as the sun set behind the mountains. From that first disastrous presentation to this moment. From enemies to partners to lovers to whatever came next. Chisom Okonkwo cried when they told him. Actually cried. Then he hugged Adanna and said, I knew it. I knew from the start you two were perfect for each other. I just needed you both to figure it out. The wedding happened 3 months later. They got married at a small ceremony in Enugu, Adanna's hometown, with just close family and friends. Adanna continued working at Okonkwo Global, now as the Director of Strategic Planning. Chisom became the CEO, his father having officially retired. They work together every day, still argue about business strategy, still challenge each other constantly. The difference is that now, after a long day of debates and decisions, they go home together. They cook dinner together in their new apartment in Victoria Island. They plan not just the company's future, but their own. They laugh about that first meeting, about how thoroughly they disliked each other, about how love snuck up on them when they weren't paying attention. People ask if anyone ever imagined this would happen. The honest answer is no. Nobody imagined someone would fall in love with the arrogant man who made those first few months under his supervision absolute hell. But life has a funny way of surprising people. Sometimes the person who challenges you the most, who pushes you to your limits and refuses to let you settle for less than your best, is exactly the person you need. Sometimes love doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it shows up in a tailored suit, criticizes presentations, and spends months pretending not to feel what's clearly there. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that insufferable person turns out to be the love of your life. So if you're in a similar situation, working with someone who drives you crazy, who seems to see right through you, who demands excellence and never lets you coast, pay attention. Because that frustration might be something else in disguise. That tension might be the beginning of something extraordinary. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that love sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. And remember, the person who challenges you the most might just be the one who loves you best. This is the story of Adanna Okafor and Chisom Okonkwo, reminding everyone that sometimes the best love stories start with terrible first impressions.